You're watching The Ready Writer, a show where I get to speak to writers of all different genres, mediums, and experiences. The Ready Writer. Are you ready? Hi, and welcome to another episode of The Ready Writer. My name is Casey Bell, and I am your host. Today, MJ Preston is joining me and talking about his book, Acadia Event. Let's get this show started. Were you always intending to be a writer when you were younger, or was this something that kind of just happened without your knowledge?
Yeah, I guess you could say I think I was preordained to become a writer. Yeah, absolutely. I took to writing short stories at a very young age. I absolutely sucked at math, so I was never going to be a physicist. But for some reason, I was drawn to storytelling. So yeah, I think it was something that it was just inside me.
So, was it something you ran into right after high school or college? And when did you take the plunge into publishing?
Oh, actually, into publishing? Well, geez, I mean, it all depends on how you want to look at it. Now, I took the plunge into publishing when I first started writing way back when, and like when I got serious about getting work published. Uh, I would say as early back as my 20s, but before I actually published a novel, I was well into my 40s or late 40s. So, or sorry, not late 40s. I'm really dating myself there. I was into my 40s when I published my first novel. I had published works before that. Uh, but it's been a long journey. Absolutely. I'm 56 now.
So, how did you publish your first book? Was it traditional, self published?
No, my first novel, The Equinox, it was traditional, or correction, it was I did self-publish. I tried to publish it traditionally, but at that time it was a very hard market to get into, and nobody knew who the heck I was, so nobody wants to throw the dice on you. So yeah, I published it independently, and it did pretty good, and kind of got my name out there and got me rolling. And then I did the same with my second, and now all of my books are now with a traditional publisher.
And as much as you said you've always been writing. There's a lot of people out there who can say the same thing, but still have yet to do anything about it. So, what was it that pushed you into doing something about your gift of writing?
Well, I would say that and I'll go back just to qualify what I said about always writing. When I was a young man, I wrote movie reviews for my local hometown paper. I wrote short stories and attempted to get them published, but I did write freelance. And then when I was in the military, I wrote military reportage for years, and but I always wanted to publish a novel. What got me onto it? Well, you know what? My first novel sat on a shelf for almost 20 years, half finished, and I just picked it up and I thought, you know what? I should really take a chance and try and finish this. And even if I don't publish it, I can say that I finished it. And that's what I would encourage any writer that's aspiring is finish that work no matter what. Finish it. Okay. Don't worry about the publishing. Don't worry about anything like that. Finish the work because that's where you've achieved your goal. And then see where it goes from there. And I was lucky enough that people liked the story and they kind of raved it up. So that's I say well into my 40s before I took it serious.
How did you find out about self publishing? And what did you do to learn how to do it?
Well, what I did is I think what a lot of new authors do is I kind of went on a fact finding mission, and one of the things I did as a new like somebody who's attempting to publish a book who has absolutely no idea what he's doing in the publication part is I went to a writing forum and I got lots of good advice from people. And I was encouraged to do so because I talked about it. I said, look, I'm well into my 40s and nobody knows who I am, but I really like to publish this and see if anybody wants to read it. And they encourage one of those people who's since passed away, another writer from England, he encouraged me to do that. And I'm glad he did because he set me down that road. And when I wrote my first book, I had no intention of moving on to a second book or a third book or a fourth book. I just wanted to do that one book to say that I did it, but all of a sudden that kind of set forth this growth in creativity. Where all of a sudden, like, oh, wow, I could write another book. So I did. Anyhow.
So are all your books self-published, or did you go into traditional at some
No,
point?
the first two books I wrote, I published them independently, and then my third book, which was called Highwayman, I submitted that to a publisher called Wild Blue Press out of Colorado, and they accepted it, and they also accepted the second of book of which, because that's a two-book story basically, so that's a series called the Highwayman series, and then they came back and they said, you know what, we want to take your other two books into the fold as well. So they rolled them into the publishing company as well. So all my books are now under the umbrella of Wild Blue Press.
Cool. So in your experience, what is the difference between the two, and what did you like, didn't like? And is there any one you prefer over the other as far as self-publishing or
Well,
going with the company?
the only thing about it, like getting in with a publisher, is there you get a lot more support. When you're an independent, you have to be your own PR guy, or you've got to be the person out there pushing your book. You've got to be the person out there, chasing every review, everything that you can. But also, I mean, the thing that a publisher gives you is, my books were never on audiobook when I was an independent, because there's a significant cost attached to that. And all my books have now gone to audiobook on Apple and iTunes, iTunes, Apple, and Audible. So that's very cool. Now, there's pros and cons to both of it when you think about it, though. The one thing is, when you publish independently, and I did two books independently first, is you have total control of everything that you do. Okay, because you are the person, you're in complete control of how that book's going. So the difference is that when you're with a publisher, I mean, there's certain parameters and things that they do and you don't do. So there's some hands-off stuff. So if you want to change the cover, well, it doesn't work that way with the publisher. You go through the cover you want, you accept the cover, that's it. If as with the publisher, when the books went to audiobook, we did auditions and everything for voice characters, and then we accepted them. So once the publisher does that, that's out the door. You don't rail that back in, or rein it back in. And when you're an independent, you have a little bit more latitude, but publishers a bit more exposure. And quite honestly, anybody can go out and publish a book independently. The question is your book really worthy of being published? And you've got to believe in what you're doing, but also a publisher gives you vindication that, you know what, they accepted my stuff, so they must think I know what I'm doing, right? So, but I like both. They're both sides of it. I'm staying with a publisher at the moment, and I'm happy with the guys that I'm with right now because they're doing a great job. But there's pros and cons to both.
Awesome. So without giving a spoiler, tell us about Acadia Event.
Okay, well, Acadia Event was inspired because I used to be an ice road trucker too. So I ended up going up on the ice roads in 2012, and I just published my second novel, or first novel, The Equinox, which was the independently published horror novel. And I went up the ice roads. I was a trucker, and a friend of mine said, "Come on up, try this out," because I was talking about quitting trucking and doing something altogether different. And so we went up on the ice road, and all of a sudden I started seeing all this stuff. Like, we drove right just below the Arctic Circle across these frozen lakes with Super Bee trucks. And I just said, wow, this is really a cool place to write a novel about. So my muse kind of got set on fire. And by the time we finished that ice road season, I'd seen and done so much. I'd taken like 10,000 photographs of the North, and pretty much the foundation was set for a new novel. So I went back, got back to work. And because I kind of like to play in three genres, in horror, sci-fi, and crime thriller. You're never going to get high literature out of me. I'm never going to write Of Mice and Men or something like that. But I will give you a good story and a lot of fun. So Acadia Event is about a guy named Marty Croft. He gets hoodwinked into his past, comes back to haunt him. He used to be a criminal in the past, and a guy comes back and forces him to do a diamond heist on the ice road. So he's got to drive a truck up to the north, and they've already got the diamonds have already been stolen. So all he has to do is retrieve them and bring them down to encourage him to go back into this life. They've kidnapped his wife. So on his way up the ice road, to go to the Minook diamond mine to get these stolen diamonds. They passed by the Acadia diamond mine, which just by a twist of fate, they found something buried in the ice. And what it is a machine. And when they open up the machine, it lets loose just droves of aliens come through and an all-out invasion happens. So this is a mishmash of a crime thriller mixed up with a sci-fi horror, and basically the North becomes the beachhead for an all-out alien invasion. And it's just a fun book. There's lots of great characters on it, and a lot of it's, some of it's autobiographical, because it's from the stuff that I seen and did up there. But it's a real fun novel. It's a big novel. It's 500 pages. I just went to audiobook, and it's being narrated by a guy named R.L. Keck. And anybody that liked the Highwayman books, they'll like Acadia Event just based on this guy. He's a fantastic narrator, and he just brings a story to life. No spoilers.
It sounds very adventurous. So off the subject, I remember, I don't know how long ago it was because I haven't watched television in a while, but I remember seeing a trailer for a TV show dealing with people who work in the ice trucking, what you just mentioned.
Yeah.
And I never saw this show because the trailers scared me. So even as you were talking about working on ice, I was scared. So was there ever a time where you felt scared, or is it overall safe to drive on ice?
Well, the ice road is pretty well controlled. By the time the trucks get up there, okay, and there's thousands of trucks that roll up those ice roads every year. They got a 6-week window to resupply the diamond mines with fuel and supplies for the entire year. So if they don't get it over those ice roads, it gets flown in by plane, which is pretty amazing, because if you drive in 50,000 liters of fuel, right, they're getting it from refinery cost. If you have to fly it in on a C-130, they could be paying $8-9 a liter. So it's very expensive not to be able to take it in this way. So it's constantly moving. It's not, so it's very controlled. They check the depth of the ice, and they're constantly watching speed and spacing, and it's all really a science. The scary part was, at least when I was up there, and I went up there for 3 seasons, was a road that ran from the city of Yellowknife up to the ice road, which was 70 kilometers of twisting, frozen road that, you'd climb up one side, go down the other, and there'd be a hard right turn, and it'd just be nothing but ice. And the opposing trucks, you'd almost be clicking mirrors. That was the scary thing for me. For the first, 12, 13 trips I did up there, I just, my hands were like white knuckled on the steering wheel, because it really was a scary road. And you understand the responsibility. I'm pulling 2 tankers that are loaded up with fuel behind me. So I got to keep that in the middle of the road, because if you slide over, you get tangled up with another truck, it doesn't end well for anybody. And it can be extremely dangerous. Over the years, we've lost a few guys on those roads. So that much. The ice is just cool. I mean, when you open your window, you can hear it popping and cracking underneath your truck, but it's just flexing. Eh? So as a truck moves across the ice, there's a little bowl underneath of it. And so what they do is they go out in convoys of 4. And you're not a man to stand on the ice, eh? You don't like the ice?
No.
No?
No.
I don't blame you. It's nothing but cold water under there anyways. But
right.
But it was a lot of fun to see and do, for sure. But it's pretty controlled. It's not, they put a lot of drama on the television shows. It's not quite as dramatic as they like to play it, but that's Hollywood.
Awesome. So are you in the process of working on any new books, any new projects?
Yeah, I've got a couple of projects in the go right now. I'm just in the process of getting my website rebuilt. But I'm working on a couple of projects. Yeah, I'm not going to really let too much out of the bag, but it's going to be another Highwayman book. So it'll be a 3rd in the series, a completely different story. It's a crime thriller, and they'll be chasing a couple of bad guys.
Cool. So I don't know how you market your books, but I think 5-6 years into me publishing books, I learned about festivals and exposés and expositions and things of that nature. And now that's kind of not really happening, and no one knows when that's going to happen. So other than podcasts and other things of that nature, how have you how have you pivoted, so to speak, marketing your books, being that we are not open to festivals and book expos and things of that nature?
It's been tough. I've had to really rethink. It's funny because when I published my novel Highwayman, the first novel, the last novel, Four, it was like we were right on the cusp. I was going out to do a big signing, and I did an interview with the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, and everything was going to coincide. And then the pandemic hit, and they closed everything. I was like, "Wow, what do we do?" Well, one of the things that I did is I said, you know what? I hang out in my garage all the time. I'm out there. Well, I used to be out there drinking beer all the time, but not as much now. But I hang out in my garage. I got dogs, and they come out and they hang out in the garage. And I started doing a thing where I called it a reading from a garage. I just take a handful of books out there, pull up, and do a little reading from a garage. And that's one of the things I did. Yes, we do the mediums coming out on the podcasts and radio and television and all that stuff. Social media. I'm probably the biggest. I would say that Facebook is the biggest social media platform for me. It's where I communicate with all the readers and other writers and everything like that. I'm on Twitter, and I'm feeling my way around Twitter, but I would say Facebook. I do a lot of interaction with readers, and that's the other thing too. Is if you've got readers, man, foster them and make sure you communicate with them, and you make them understand how much you appreciate that they're actually supporting your art, because they are, quite honestly, the only reason for doing this. If you don't got readers, why tell stories? You're just that crazy guy sitting on the corner mumbling to himself, right? But if you've got two really good readers, they're going to tell other readers, and that brings more readers. And you know what? They're the receptacles. So those are the ones you really got to work with them and talk to them and get their feedback too, and you got to chase your reviews. I mean, you got to ask people that read your books, please just leave me a review. They don't have to write you War and Peace, but if they throw a sentence and, hey, I really like this book, and a couple of stars, that's going to help you as well. So but it's always an uphill battle for everybody, unless you got a built-in audience like Stephen King or the great Joe Lansdale. You're going to have to battle your way to get every review, every sale, everything you can do. But that's what it's all about.
Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
So my last question for you, somewhat off the topic, it's a fun question. It's pretend, so the person you choose does not have to actually be alive. So if you had the opportunity to write a book with an author, whether they be dead or alive, who would it be and why would you choose them?
Write a book with an author. A lot of people say, I'd like to write a book with somebody like Stephen King or something like that. And I think Stephen King, I just feel nothing but self-conscious through the whole process. It's like you'd send him a chapter, like, oh my God, it's just going to tear it to pieces. No, I'd like to write a book with somebody, I would pick a more independent author, somebody like Gene O'Neill or B.E. Scully. There are so many writers out there that are, that aren't up at the elevation of these, these New York Times bestselling authors and world famous authors, that their craft is just so amazing. And these are people from the indie community. Another one I would name would be Christy Peterson Schoonover, Michael Bailey, any of these people. And you should seek these people out because they are brilliant writers. And I've had the opportunity to work with some of them. And that's what I would do. But I don't know. For me, writing's a very solitary thing too. So I have my own style. So I think I'd probably tread on somebody else. But Gene O'Neill, I think, would be my first pick.
Well, that's all the time I have for you today on The Ready Writer. Thank you so much for joining me. MJ Preston, thank you for joining me and for sharing your journey. And of course, to the audience, thank you so much for joining me. Have a great day.